You're listening to The Crypt, and my special guest on the show today is Tom Conwell, a UFOologist from New York City and a member of the Tri-City New York Paranormal Society. So you're very welcome to the show, Tom.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is very exciting.
It is, surely. Well, firstly, could you give us a bit of background about yourself and your paranormal investigation team?
Okay, well, first of all, a minor correction. I'm not from New York City. I'm from New York State.
Oh, okay.
So, big difference.
Geography was never my strong point.
From New York City, you look out the window and you see buildings. Here I look out the window and I see trees. Oh. That's the big difference. But anyway, myself, my background, I started in with the military. After 2 years of pre-engineering school, I went to the Navy, and I went to electronic technician school. Mm-hmm. And I became a technician in the Navy. That's where I learned what set me up for the next 20 years with my company, a subject called metrology. Mm-hmm. Now, what metrology is the science of measurement. Now, if you had a measuring instrument and you didn't know if it was reading right anymore, you would send that machine to me, and I would compare it with a higher standard. Put on a calibration sticker, send it back to you, and then you feel confident for the next 6 months to a year that it's going to read correctly. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much what a metrologist does. At the same time, I was a biomedical engineer. I would be repairing and looking into bettering equipment that was made for the hospital industry. Yeah. So I could walk into an ICU one day and into a rocket company the next. It was really wild. I mean,
yeah, very varied.
Very crazy, very crazy. All right, well, after 20 years or so doing that with my company was Honeywell, by the way, mm-hmm. I moved to another division of Honeywell. The reason I did that is because my division was being compressed and moved to Boston. Well, had nothing to do with Boston. Mm-hmm. I wanted to live out in the country like I live now. So I went to a different division, and they worked on temperature control systems. Go into a big building and it's 70 degrees. Well, it's that for a reason. There's a whole lot going on behind the scenes. So that job stretched into fire alarm work, and the fire alarm work stretched into security work, and pretty soon Honeywell was offering a combined system for major corporations, temperature, fire, and security, and we put them all in one great big package. And it became very interesting. Mm-hmm. Now, at the same time, I was working in the software end with my company. Our front-end computers, they would display at a particular time what the status of the fire system was, or maybe one of the temperatures in one of the buildings was going crazy, and you could actually look at the system and see what was going on. Well, I wrote all of the front-end software so that you could see in real time in a picture format what was actually happening, and that was a lot of fun. I had more fun doing that than anything. And so that's pretty much what I did until I retired about almost 5 years ago now. And since then, I have been with my lifelong passion, the cosmos and UFOs, and so I just jumped right into it. I found a local group, and we are looking at all kinds of the paranormal. Mm. We have a group of guys and girls who go out into the woods and investigate Bigfoot.
Okay.
And there's a whole lot of sightings around here in the wilderness of the Adirondack Mountains. And we have people that do that on a continuing basis, as you can imagine, only in the summertime, in fall and spring, because the winter you can't even walk there because the snow is so deep. But we also do that, and I'm in charge of the UFO group, where my job is to try to create some interest, write blogs that will inform and get people interested in UFOs. I give speeches. I've given 3 so far on various topics of UFOs. They're free to the public. And what we really want to do is create some interest and have people come in and talk to us and express their interest in all kinds of subjects.
And how did you first become interested in UFOs yourself?
Okay. Well, I was, I guess, about 10 years old. My aunt was a secretary for the Astronomical Association of America. She also lived like 2 houses down from my grandmother. So when we went over to visit my grandmother, it was my chore to try to get my parents to go over and visit my aunt who was down the street, so that I could take a look at some of the publications that she had from the Astronomical Association. Mm-hmm. I was really interested in this stuff. I just couldn't get enough of it. Now, this is when I was 10, okay? My parents signed me up for summer classes over at the planetarium on the other side of the city. Well, they couldn't get me there, so they showed me how to use the streetcars and buses, and I would transfer from a bus to a streetcar, go all the way across to the city. Oh, by the way, at the time I lived in Pittsburgh. Now that I look back on it, I didn't really think about it at the time and haven't thought about it since, but now that I look back on it, I probably wouldn't have allowed my own child to get on a bus and go into the city and transfer to a streetcar and go out. I wouldn't have allowed that.
Yeah.
But my mom knew how passionate I was, and I know she was pretty panic-stricken. And of course, at the time, there were no cell phones, so I couldn't pick up a cell phone or text my mom or anything. So I'm sure she was pretty much at odds until I walked in the door.
Well, that's it. You'd be up the wall till you'd see you coming back.
Yep. So when I was 12, now at this time I was only interested in science and the cosmos. Hadn't really heard much about UFOs. But for whatever reason, I had some interest in them. I don't know where it came from. I really don't. And it's not like I saw a UFO or anything. Yeah. But when I was 12, my parents bought me my first book, so I talked about it. It's written by Major Donald Kehoe. The Flying Saucer Conspiracy was the name of it. And it was pretty interesting book. I took a lot of heat from teachers and my friends and whatever else about looking at, well, the fringe, I guess they might call it.
Yeah.
But I just knew something was going on there. I just knew it. I don't know why I knew it. I just knew it. Now, this was probably about 1959, just so you have a time frame. And I was, this was the point where, in the States anyhow, Project Blue Book was in the middle of its existence. And that was a Air Force study to try to debunk everything that people happened to be seeing about UFOs. And they was pretty good at it. Where I knew that there was an issue is I saw one report, and I don't know why this happened because most newspapers wouldn't allow stuff like this into it. But I saw a report from northern Michigan, and they wrote generally what the report was about. And it was obvious that someone saw something particular in the sky that was moving around. And Project Blue Book came up with the explanation that it was swamp gas. Wait, I was 12 and I knew it wasn't. It couldn't have been. That's impossible. Okay, so I knew something was up. I really knew it at that point. And I guess I was voracious trying to get information about it. Well, back in 59, 60, 61, there was no information. This stuff wasn't allowed to come out. So I guess I concentrated on school and kept looking in the papers for anything. And then I guess put my life in fast forward, and life happens, and 2 kids. And married for 40, hold on, I have to do the math.
You get in trouble now.
2.5 years. And then when I retired, I could just go into it 100%.
Yeah.
And I did. And that's pretty much it. That's a long story short.
And then, of course, you have the power of the internet now.
Boy, oh boy, there's some stuff out there now, from the actual Project Blue Book reports all the way up to conspiracy theories. It's just everything. You can read about anything.
And then can you talk a bit about the cosmos and where you believe there is life in the universe? Do you believe it's in our solar system or further afield?
First of all, we need to do a little description about where we live and heard a car go by. Where we live and what is going on potentially where we live. Now, go out into the deep woods where it's really dark. There's no lights, there's no cars, there's no houses or whatever else. And look up in the sky. Of course, it has to be a clear day. And you will see a swath of stars that goes at an angle from way high in the sky down to the horizon from your viewpoint. Mm-hmm. This swath of stars happens to be the Milky Way galaxy that we live in. We're looking out the edge, because we live out on the farthest end. We look out the edge of this galaxy, and we see it as almost a straight line in the sky. And that's just pretty obvious. There's a whole lot of stars in the Milky Way galaxy. How many? Well, it's estimated to be about 200 billion stars. Oh my God. That's just in our galaxy. That's it, just in our galaxy. Also, go out into the wilderness, look up in the sky, and look away from this swath of stars. You'll see a couple of stars. It won't be near as many as you'd see in the swath that's a Milky Way, but out in the whole remainder of the other sky, there'll be some stars and nothing really remarkable until you start looking closer. You get a telescope and look closer and look at higher amplifications to what you're looking at. You're going to see stars that were not visible, except these aren't stars. These are galaxies, entire galaxies. And there may be in the visible universe, there might be 200 billion galaxies.
God, we're just a tiny dot, really, aren't we?
Oh, really? Now, if you look at, okay, how many stars could there be in the whole universe? Well, first of all, there's two answers to that. Number one is the visible universe. That's what we can see with our strongest telescopes. And then there's the rest of the universe that we can't see, okay? So let's just say that there's 200 billion stars in the universe, 200 billion stars in the Milky Way, and 200 billion galaxies in the universe. That would make a total of stars 4 with 22 zeros after it in stars, okay? Now, that's the visible universe. I think in the invisible universe, stuff we can't see, there might be 1 trillion galaxies. The numbers, they can't even be appreciated because they're so big. Now, these are just stars, okay? How many stars in all? Well, I answered that question. Well, how many civilizations are there? Well, we started looking at our own solar system, which is the sun and the planets and the moons around those planets that we're familiar with. And we started realizing that there may have been some life that already existed. Mars, for instance, many hundreds of thousands of years ago, had some catastrophic event where the atmosphere was ripped away from the planet. And what was left was just a cinder, pretty much. The planet recovered, and now we have what we have. We have a whole lot of dust and a whole lot of stuff. Now, was there a civilization there? Well, there could have been. There could have been enough to at least have plant and animal life, for sure. Because that stuff happens just Just happens. Now, let's look a little further afield here. Let's look out to Jupiter. Jupiter, obviously, can't be a human living on Jupiter because it's a gas giant. But why can't there be something on a moon? In fact, one of the moons, Europa, is filled with water. This moon, as it goes around Jupiter, is being stretched on the side that faces the planet. And as it turns, other sections get stretched. So this stretching and contraction on the moon Europa is creating heat internally. This planet is full of water. So we have heat generated internally of the planet, of the moon, and the moon is surrounded by water. Who says that water couldn't be ripe for life? There could be fish there. They would have to be a little bit different because the planet the moon is covered in ice. And the reason we figured that it was probably mostly water is through radar, first of all. But then when we sent spacecraft out alongside of it, we see plumes of water vapor spitting out into deep space. Plumes of water vapor. So water must exist in a liquid form in order for that to occur.
Yeah.
And it needs to be warm enough in order to create up enough pressure to break through the ice and spit out. Now these plumes of water vapor are in the 2 to 3 to 4 times higher than Mount Everest. So there's tremendous pressure blowing water out from this moon, and there's some stuff going on. That's just our solar system. Now, let's get back to the Milky Way. Let's say 1 out of 1,000,000 stars have a planet on it. And this planet has water and has some sort of breathable air. Doesn't have to be oxygen, it could be nitrogen, it could be anything, okay? But some sort of breathable air that some human or alien civilization could adapt to and work with and live on. 1 out of 1,000,000, let's say. If there's 200 billion stars, that means there may be 200,000 civilizations. That's 1 out of 1,000,000, okay? And that's not a whole lot, okay? There might be 200,000 civilizations. It is absolutely astronomical. I mean, you can't even wrap your mind around that. And that's just the Milky Way.
So, and then when you think, like, we can travel that far out into space to know, there could be, as you said, civilization after civilization we don't know about. They could know about each other.
Oh, absolutely. And I wouldn't doubt that there are civilizations that are cross-communicating, that we are at a point now where we're going to start communicating with other civilizations. I don't want to get too much ahead of where I'm going here, but matter of fact, what I'll do is I will address that later when I talk about something different. But let's just talk about civilizations. These civilizations are about to make contact with us. There's no doubt in my mind it's going to happen. And it's not going to happen in the too distant future. NASA has said that there are, within 20 years, we will be making contact with another civilization. 20 years. Because in 20 years, they figure that we're going to be far enough advanced, and they're going to give us enough background information that we aren't going to panic when that happens.
Well, then, of course, we all ask the question, are we alone in the universe? So if there are indeed other intelligent civilizations, how would they get here?
Oh, there's another problem, okay? Let's talk about, actually, the only way that we can understand how they would get here is to appreciate what it would take for us to get there.
Yeah.
Because we know what we have, okay? And but we don't know what their technologies are. And I'm going to talk about those in a minute. But let's just say that we looked at the fastest spacecraft that we have ever launched. And that fastest spacecraft is Voyager. And Voyager 1 and 2, I think they're going about the same speed. Voyager 1 just left our solar system. It was launched in 1976. Now, that's just our solar system.
Right.
And it just left it, okay? The nearest star is 4.2 light years away. Now, what's a light year? Okay, it's a whole nother issue. A light year is the distance, and a light year is not a time, by the way.
Right.
A light year is a distance, how far it would be for a beam of light to travel in 1 year's time. Now, that number comes out to be approximately 6 trillion miles. That's a 6 with 12 zeros. Now, we have gone only a tiny fraction of that 6 trillion miles, and that's only 1 light year. How long would it take for us to get to the nearest star? Well, the nearest star, would traveling at the fastest speed that we've accomplished to date, it would take 76,000 years.
So whoever be travelling from the other direction, they'd want to be far more advanced than us.
Far more. And they would have had to have found another way around it. There has to be another way for them to do it. A shortcut. Mm-hmm. Okay? It has to be a shortcut. If let's say, an alien civilization could attain the speed of light, it would still take them 4.2 years to get from the nearest star to here. The Milky Way is 100,000 light years. That number is just too big to even imagine, right? It. So there has to be some sort of shortcut. There has to be. If, say, for instance, they could attain the speed of light somehow, things start changing, and they're not for the good. If we were to get a spacecraft, big spacecraft, and send that out into space and be able to speed it up so that it came close to the speed of light, some of the things would change would be, as you approach the speed of light, your mass, how dense your spacecraft happens to be, your mass would approach infinity, infinite mass. In other words, 1 trillion suns. Okay, that's infinite mass. Now, once you approach the speed of light, how are you going to accelerate through the speed of light? Well, let's say you hung a rocket ship on the moon and blasted it. Are you going to move the moon? You're not. You're not going to move it an inch. All right. All right. So, what happened if it's 1 trillion times denser? You just aren't going to move it. That's why things become really crazy at the speed of light. That's one of the reasons. Yeah. Right? The other reason is, as you're approaching the speed of light, your ship starts to condense itself. It's not going to be as long as it was. It's going to become shorter and shorter and shorter. Still just as wide, but shorter and shorter. And once you slow down from the speed of light, things will return to normal. Another weird thing that occurs, okay? But it's just not going to be possible to approach and advance past the speed of light unless there's a shortcut. So, the speed of light, light travels at 186,000 miles per second. I don't know what that is in kilometers, okay? But 186,000 miles per second. That's a lot. That's per second, not per. So, and that is, just so that you'll be able to understand, that is approximately 11 million times faster than when you go on a superhighway. 11 million times, not
it's really mind-blowing, isn't it?
It's beyond belief. It's beyond belief. And this is what people rarely think about when they think about space travel. We almost seem like we're in a spot that nobody can get to. How does any civilization go from place to place? Well, they had to have found some cut around, some way to go faster than the speed of light without actually traveling through the speed of light. Now, there's another problem. How do we maintain ourselves in space? If you hop in a car and drive down the road and take a trip to your local holiday place, you know what you need to do. You can plan for the trip and everything else. What would happen if you had to take a trip in space? Well, you have to bring everything with you. Your air, you have to bring entertainment, you have to bring parts, you have to bring people to repair things. You have to have a mini civilization with you. This is just crazy.
And you don't know what to expect, I suppose, the further you travel out.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Now, you also have to be able to protect yourself against cosmic rays. Now, the Earth is bombarded with rays on a continuing basis. Some of them just go right through the Earth as if it's not even there. They don't really bother us. Others come through and create things like, not actual sunburn, but create things like sunburn. And will, when they hit a cell, will destroy the cell. Sometimes that's what causes cancer. What happens when you're in space? Because the Earth protects against some of this stuff with its ozone layer and its magnetic field around it. In space, there's nothing to protect. You're going to get bombarded from every direction. Old supernovas that have been created way the heck out in the cosmos are now going to start bombarding you because the cosmic rays are finally going to reach you while you're in space. You're going to have some serious problems, and you're going to have to find out a way to control them. It's very, very hard. Very, very hard. Now, let's just say that a space civilization was able to solve the fact that they would need a large civilization with them. In other words, build a huge craft that has a whole civilization on it, and they can create their own water and air and whatever else. Let's say they could do that, right? How do they actually travel beyond the speed of light? Because you can't put civilizations out for 1,000 years and say, okay, guys, you're on your own for the next 1,000 years, and when you get there, give us a call. I mean, that's just crazy. So there has to be a way to get there quickly.
Yeah.
Let's just say, if you're going to a concert, and you go to the concert, and you realize you arrived late, and you'll have to park 2 or 3 miles away and walk the full length of the concert door. That's annoying. But what if you're standing at your car and you could make the space between where you're standing and the front door move from in front of you to behind you? If you could do that, then all of a sudden you'd have moved 3 miles in no time at all without creating any effort. That is the kind of thing that I believe is going on in space that will allow a ship to travel much, much faster than the speed of light effectively. It won't accelerate through the speed of light. It'll be effectively, if you were to measure it, what went from here to here in 5 seconds, well, that's faster than the speed of light. But they didn't actually go anywhere. They didn't actually light off their rockets. They didn't actually do any of that. They just went from point A to point B with almost no energy. That is something that's called a warp drive. We all heard that from Star Trek. If you've ever seen Star Trek, warp drive, and they say it all the time. Yeah. We know that it's most likely possible. There has been a warp engine that was designed, but we don't have the exotic particles to pull it off and to make it actually work yet. We're working on it.
So then how would the UFO move within our atmosphere?
Okay, well, how would it move? Let's just say that you look at some of the reports, and a UFO takes off from a standstill and is moving 20,000 miles per hour, which is just incredible speed, and makes a left-hand turn. Mm-hmm. Just boom, left-hand turn.
Because that's what you always hear, isn't it?
I don't know how that would be possible, okay? But again, the way to understand this is to see what would happen if we tried that with one of our ships. Right? Let's take a jet going just 2,000 miles per hour, flying straight ahead, and all of a sudden makes a left turn. What would happen? Well, it wouldn't be good. The first thing to happen would be the wings would rip off. The second thing, the engine would fly apart. The third thing is all of the atoms for the pilot would then be smeared on the left side of the aircraft, on the right side of the aircraft, opposite from the turn. And if he could recover from that without any damage, and it's not very likely, he'd be a peanut butter smear on the wall of the airplane. But let's just say he could recover. He's flying in a wingless, powerless fuselage that's probably now in pieces, and his day is about to get worse. That's what we have with our flight. Yeah. We could do it, all right? Because in our crafts, we are surrounded by all of the laws of physics. Everything that would dictate to how fast a thing can travel in our space, how it heats up as it moves through the air. We are bound by those rules. We have no choice. We're bound by those rules. But what would happen if in a UFO you could create a bubble around you?
Right.
Like a electromagnetic field, for instance. A field around you that would protect you from the laws of physics. You would create your own physics within the field.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, let me just explain electromagnetic field. What is electromagnetic field? For some of you listeners who may not understand that, if you were to take a pencil and a whole lot of wire and wrap around the pencil closely this wire and wrap it tightly and fill up the whole pencil with a wrap, and the other ends of the wire that were left on the each end of the pencil, you hook to a power source. You would create an a flow of electrons from, let's say, one side of the battery to the other through this coil of wire.
Right.
As the coil of wire is accepting this flow of electrons, it will create a magnetic field. In effect, you have created a magnet. With this device, the battery probably won't last very long because you're going to be drawing a lot of current from it. But for the period of time that the battery works, you'll be able to pick up things like paper clips and anything metallic. Right? You'll be able to pick them up. Right? That's an electromagnetic field. You create a magnet through the flow of electricity. Now, what would happen if it were the opposite? Let's just say that you had a coil of wire like you had, not hooked up to a battery, and it's hooked up to a meter. And you got a magnet. You know, one of those horseshoe magnets.
Yeah. And
you move the horseshoe magnet along the edge of the coil of wire. What would happen to the meter? The meter would jump.
Right.
Because the magnetic field that you've created, that is surrounding this magnet, the magnetic field will cross the lines of the coil and create a current in the opposite direction. Right? That's generally all that a magnetic field is. Mm-hmm. If you created a magnetic field that was strong enough, could it defy gravity? Well, it'd have to be pretty big, first of all. Right now, we're able to levitate things like tennis balls and smaller devices with magnetic fields. If we had enough power, we may be able to levitate an entire spacecraft. In the last 150 years, we have gone as a civilization from horseback to space flight. 150 years. Just 150 years, horseback to spaceflight. What would a civilization be able to do in 10,000? It would. There's no words for what they would be able to come up with. Now, if you had some of these spacecraft are able to hover, okay? Even though they're able to fly very, very fast and turn on a dime, they're also able to come to a stop and hover in place. Right? Now, we have craft that can hover, helicopters.
Yeah.
But boy, do they make noise. The reason they make noise is the tips of the rotor blades that are spinning around at like enormous speeds. The tips of these rotor blades are breaking the sound barrier. And there's small sonic booms all around this helicopter. This is why they make so much noise.
Exactly.
And if you see something hovering in space, or in the air above you, and it's not making any noise, boy, that's something special.
Then the other thing I want to ask you is, many people believe the government are aware that we have been, and to this day are still visited by extraterrestrials. So if this is true, why do you think it's all kept so top secret?
Well, I believe that back in the 40s, when they first became intimately aware that other space civilizations were visiting us through space crashes, Roswell, and the like, they were aware that other civilizations were here. Now, this was 1947, right after World War II. Everybody was still pretty jittery about having another group of people come over and start bombing our shores. They were really scared. I can only imagine the actual fight that went on in, let's say, Great Britain, who were bombed continuously with buzz bombs from the Nazis. Now, as a group of people, we were scared to death. What would happen if we came out and told people that our planet is visited by someone not of the Earth, and they're so technologically advanced that we can't begin to understand anything that they do? Don't fight them, because you'll be destroyed. And by the way, they may want to experiment on some of your bodies, so just go with the flow.
Widespread panic.
You're like, what? This can't possibly be true. And that's the reason that they used to keep it quiet. And I think initially it was probably a fairly sound reason.
And I think as well, you'd mentioned in one of your blogs, like the whole aspect of religion. It kind of throws everyone's beliefs out the window, really, doesn't it?
It really will. It will challenge you for sure. If your religion specifically stated that you were created and you are unique, and all of a sudden somebody else shows up and says, wait a minute, what was this in this book here? The talk, it would shake you to the core.
Oh, totally.
It really would. Now, add to that, the government initially started lying and had no alternative. I actually firmly believe that.
Yeah.
Let's just say that they started to leak out little bits of information. I say after the Project Blue Book ran its course, which was, I think, 1969, all of a sudden, governments stopped talking about it. They made blanket statements like, we don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Don't even pay attention to it. There's nothing there. There's no threat to us. No big deal, okay? They actually said that, and they stopped trying to debunk everything. They stopped trying to say, hey, you have to worry about this, and don't have to worry about that. They don't even say it anymore. They don't even mention it. So, what's happened is, since that point, in 2009, Father Funes, I believe that's his name, he's a Roman Catholic astronomer. He made a statement that, I'm going to quote a portion of this, ruling out the existence of aliens would be like putting limits on God's creative freedom. What? I heard that, I went, say what? The Roman Catholic Church said this. I just couldn't believe it. Now, since then, the Pope has, in like tongue-in-cheek, been asked a couple of questions. What would you do with extraterrestrials? Well, the Pope tried to sort of slough it off a little bit by saying, "Oh, if someone came from Mars, we would welcome them, and if they came from another planet, they probably wouldn't possess original sin, and
oh God,
we would welcome them." And, wait a minute, what? How could the Catholic Church say this without knowing something? They know absolutely that extraterrestrial life exists. Like I said before, NASA announced that they're going to find life within 20 years. They already know. Well, the reason that they can say it is because of the advances that they're making in looking at other star systems. They've discovered probably, I don't know, the number's probably up pretty high, but probably close to 5,000 planets already. I don't know if it's that high, but 5,000 planets around other stars. 5,000 already in just a couple of stars, okay? Well, more than a couple, but a lot of stars. Now, they've developed technology so that they could look at the spectrum of light that's being reflected through the planets that are going around the sun. As these planets transit the sun, and they go across the sun from our viewpoint, the spectrum of light that goes through the atmosphere changes. And our instrumentation has gotten good enough that we can actually pick out what kind of chemicals are in the spectrum. Well, we know what kind of chemicals have to exist in our atmosphere. We're going to look for building blocks of life. And that's where they've come up with within 20 years, we're going to find something that has life on it. And I think they will. But they already know.
So many people, like if you say to someone, "Oh, do you believe in extraterrestrials?" With the whole thing of Hollywood and movies, the first thing people think of is that you think little green men are running around the planet somewhere. Like, I think it's awful ignorant to think that we, of the size of this universe, that we are the only planet that has people living on it. Do you know?
Yep.
Because, like, do you know, when we say UFOs and extraterrestrials, it would be people just like me or you living on a planet somewhere. And people need to get this whole idea, Little Green Men and Alien the movie and everything out of their head. Do you know, when they think about that?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, that's one of the reasons that they did with the Little Green Men kind of thing is I believe what they did was they encouraged Hollywood to make movies that were talking about extraterrestrial life, but made it so campy that people would say, "Nah, can't be."
But that's it. It makes you look mad if you turn around and say you believe in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly. It, exactly.
Governments around the world have gone silent really in about the past 10 years, and they're not saying anything. And that's like they're allowing bits of information to get through. And in my opinion, that is a revelation. They're revealing what they're not saying by what they're not saying. And in one of my blogs, I mentioned the phrase that keeps sticking in my mind, keeps popping up, that world governments are capitulating by silence. In other words, they're giving in to the realization that we're not alone just by becoming and being silent.
Well, Tom, this has been absolutely fascinating, and there's so much more I want to talk to you about, but we're running out of time. So would you be interested in coming back on the show next week? Because I want to talk to you about abductions. You've interviewed loads of people who've claimed to be abducted, so I'd love to have a show about that next week if you'd be interested.
Absolutely would be.
Fantastic. Well, listen, Tom, it's been absolutely fascinating. I've learned so much today, and I look forward to speaking again next week.
Me too, Rita. Thanks a whole lot, and I love listening to your accents. You can call me anytime.
Thank you.